Hey, does this music get you ready to learn something new about real estate? To care? The market is changing. We all know that. Halloween's coming up. Have you ever been to a spooky house that just felt weird? You know, you went in there. I'm of the believer that houses do have a spirit, do have a sense in them. It's of course square footage and rooms and things like that, but there's also a sense about the house. There is energy that moves around that house. As the market changes, buyers are going to be looking for houses that feel good. Not only are the right price in the right town, but feel good when they walk in there. And staging a house, they say, is one of the best ways to do that. In fact, every stager I know says the cost of staging is much less than your first price break. But let's go beyond staging and let's talk about feng shui. My guest today is Steve Kodad from Intrinsic School of Feng Shui. Welcome aboard. It's so good to have you here, Steve.
Oh, thank you so much, Larry. Great to be here.
It's we share a number of very bizarre things, and that happens in this world. It seems to get smaller and smaller, kind of like older people; they get littler and littler. But we both grew up in Pennsylvania. I live here in Massachusetts. He spent some time here, a Red Sox fan, and of course, we all know Red Sox fans are just kind of upset right now because the team stunk. But let's forget that and let's talk about feng shui. I know people don't always understand what it is, but I know that you got into feng shui from being a stager and starting to incorporate some of that into your staging business. Do I have that right?
Well, not exactly, actually. I was a realtor myself for 20 years, and I did get certified as a home stager because I knew how important it was. And so certainly I did some of that to start with. But I was always looking for other ways to sell my listings as fast as possible to be able to get to the next sale. And I discovered feng shui sort of a funny way with somebody sending me an email, but I found out about it, decided to look into it, and I found out that it really helps a great deal to sell a house, and it's very inexpensive to actually do it this way. And so that's how I got involved. Very, very practical reason. I just wanted to sell my listings.
Right. So then that what is the definition of feng shui, and how do we
Well,
apply it to our houses?
well, I mean, there's an awful lot of definitions. Probably the most simplistic one is the art of placement. But as I tell my classes, that is a very, very simple way to put it. It's so much more than where the couch goes or where the bed goes, all those kind of things. Very, very important. But in a lot of ways, it's really you need to wrap it around the idea of bringing nature into the house and making it more natural and feeling that way. So there's a lot of feeling in it, feeling into the definition and making it the energy being a lot more presentable, a lot more comfortable.
Well, lots of architects work that way as well, um, where they situate. I think it's called situo. It's where an architect sits along the land to figure out where the house wants to be.
Well, that's excellent. In my school, we talk about direction in a different way than some of the other schools do. You probably, being in the business, know what I'm talking about when in the middle of the summer you're walking up to a house in the morning as east facing and you're touching the doorknob and it practically burns your hand off. And so the front of the house quite often is very uncomfortable. To me, feng shui is about being comfortable 24/7, 12 months of the year. So in a lot of cases, I would prefer a house to be facing north or south so that the house is actually pretty much usable all day long and much more comfortable. So I worry about where the sun comes up. I worry about where the wind's coming from, those kind of things. That's more important to me than worrying about your most auspicious directions, which we get into, but I work with primarily existing homes. And so existing homes, I can't pick them up and move them. So it faces your favorite direction. I can't do that. So therefore, I got into a form of feng shui that is more, you might say, practical.
Right.
And so we use two different schools of feng shui together called form school, which is the oldest school. And then the other one is called BTB, and it's more of the very popular version in the United States.
Does BTB stand for anything?
Well, the first word is Buddhist. So
Okay.
when I bring that up, some people take a giant leap with that idea, and I think that sort of loses the cause. It's really not about the religion. It was brought over from Tibet into China. So those are some of the words that are in there. But it's always been the shortened version is BT.
Well, I am a neophyte in this, but I did have an expensive property that I had on the market for a while, and I had a designer come through and
Mhm.
say to me, "Oh, you should feng shui this house. It would be so much better." I
Mhm.
said, "What does that mean?" And she said, "Well, you need plants in your corners, so the air flows around. You shouldn't have the front door and the back door, so you can walk right through." So I know that part, but I'm sure that's just one little tiny part.
Right. That's a part of a module that you might talk about. But all those things are very true. Uh, you actually, with a particular floor plan, you actually lay over a template or a map, which is called the Bagua. And that is one way you differentiate different schools. But when you're talking about a plan in the corner, right away my mind goes to the back left-hand corner. That's the wealth corner of the property. So, a lot of folks will advocate you to put a vertical growing green plant there in that corner. And
I'm
so that
standing
is
in the back
representing,
left-hand corner.
yeah. So you're representing wealth at that point. So, there are different quadrants, which are called guas in feng shui, different quadrants of the house that can be enhanced in different ways. But I mean, I got to the point over the last 20 years, basically working with an idea that to me, there are the eight most impressionable moments considering feng shui. And if you don't mind, I'll go through those for you. The first one is curb appeal, which of course
Yeah.
is so pivotal in function in real estate anyway.
Right.
And so one of the things that I tell a lot of people about is that you really need to make sure you do a fantastic job with the photos.
Yeah.
But to get to that point, if I were you, I would try to consider using feng shui to make the photos really pop. For example, bringing in a little bit of red and having contrast in the front yard. Too many houses out there have all green
Yeah.
yards,
Yeah.
and they don't stand out. They blend together. So there's really nothing that makes you really
Right.
even remember the house.
Right.
So contrast is a big thing. So curb appeal is the first thing. But then the second step to me is walking from the car with your clients up to the front door. That can turn them off too. And you're wanting to draw, yes, something called chi towards the front door, but you're also wanting to draw your clients to the front door too and get them all excited. So that's the second step. The third step's at the front door. And if you've read any books about feng shui, you probably know how important the front door is, the front entrance.
Right.
That's where the primary amount of energy comes into the house. So we spend a lot of time working on that front door, making it amazing.
Yeah. Right.
And the door has to be in contrast to the exterior so it pops. Again, all this stuff will show up in the photos really. Fourth step is in the foyer. The fifth step is the room of first impression. Sixth step is actually how does it flow through the house? I mean, are you going to feel like you might run into something? And then the last two, I always sort of group together. They're the two most important rooms, Larry. They are the kitchen and the master bedroom. And so when I or my partner actually enhances a house, we spend an awful lot of time on those two rooms. And, you can do an awful lot, even with a vacant house.
Right.
with respect to enhancing those two rooms.
Well, with color and shape and
Hmm.
something alive, is that what you're suggesting?
Well, I certainly prefer live, and certainly you have ran into people who said I don't have a green thumb, but it's important because the energy that comes off the plant is also helpful. And believe it or not, even the pollution control that certain plants give you is also something that we work with in our school. So a live plant can be very, very advantageous for people in so many ways. So yeah, those are all very, very important things. I mean, we get into the five senses, and the idea of the aroma is really pivotal, the sounds that you want to have. So you can probably imagine, I'm a big proponent of open houses.
Yeah.
I know a lot of real estate agents are not, but with Feng Shui, you can produce really, really astounding open houses that you really can't duplicate, when they leave for work or leave for school. You can't do some of these things and leave them on. Okay,
Right.
so
Well, for instance, music, is that one of the things you're talking about? In
what's
an
that?
music?
Oh, yes. Well, I mean that can certainly be left on, of course, but the things I'm talking about are possibly a water fountain at the front door, or possibly using candles that really sort of make certain architectural benefits pop out and be more memorable for people. So whether you have, I know you have probably a lot of fireplaces in Mass. And so, the fireplace can be really enhanced quite a bit for those 2 hours that you're doing an open house by just putting
Right.
some candles in there, or even using them in a bathtub, for example.
Here's
So,
something that I often hear, Steve. When agents go into a house and it's got an overwhelming smell, good or bad. Bad is
right,
bad, but
right.
good smell. I've heard more than one agent turn and say, "I wonder what that's hiding," and say no smells in the house when we do our inspection.
Right.
Is there concern when it smells too great?
Well, yes. I mean, if you think about the woman or the man that is wearing too much of a cologne or a perfume, you don't want that. So the way I teach my students is that it has to be extremely subtle,
Yeah.
also extremely recognizable, so that they're not trying to figure out what it is.
Right.
And so, I want it to be very, very subtle. And I use certain aromas in the majority of the house, and then I change it one time. I change it in the master bedroom.
Oh, okay.
So I make it more of what we call yin. And it's, certainly like something like a lavender, for example, very subtle,
Right.
but it represents the idea that they're walking from a different part of the house into another part of the house that is really different, a place that they're going to be able to restore their energy and really get up the next day and get that promotion. So,
Right.
it's the master bedroom is very pivotal.
I find all this stuff interesting in that it there's almost no tangible way to define that it's worked, and yet it feels like it works. If you go into a place that excuse me has the right feeling,
Uh-huh.
you know it immediately. So can you take a house that maybe it's just a regular condo. It's like every other single condo of 200. You really can't do the front door because they're up on the second floor.
Right.
You can maybe do the door of the condo. Um, and by the way, I live in a place where condos can be $2 million, so that front door
Right.
is already pretty nice. But I'm talking about differentiating it from all of the others as you walk through a building.
Right. Well, certainly a lot of condos, uh, they don't even want that. They have rules that you can't even paint the front door. So I run into that every once in a while. And so that is definitely a problem.
Yeah.
So, one thing you'd want to do is to make sure that whatever the color is, that it's possibly repainted and and the hardware
Fresh.
is shiny,
Yeah.
and that the welcome mat is really welcoming. And then, even putting an item outside can sometimes be something as a no-no. but I like to frame the door, even in a condo, if I can, with some color. And so to just sort of draw the interest and make it more memorable for folks. But you know, you really run into different HOA situations where you cannot do certain things there. But when I walk inside of a condo, for example, or really any house, I want to make sure the lighting is amazing. Some people don't take advantage of the natural light. Natural light is the way to go in feng shui. So we want to show natural. So I want to make sure whatever natural light I have coming in there that I'm really taking advantage of it. And then of course the aroma is important, but I want to make sure there's not an awful lot of extra furniture. I want to make sure that it's placed in a particular way,
Right.
which I might as well talk about right now. That
Yeah, please
the,
do.
the idea of the furniture, which again, most people sort of think that's pretty much it, is that you want to put it in what we call the classic armchair setting, or maybe you consider it the command position. So my son, for example, is a policeman in Charlotte, North Carolina. And when we would go out to lunch, even though he can't even pronounce feng shui, he would always sit in the same kind of situation. He would sit with his back to a wall and he could see who was entering into the restaurant. It didn't matter if he had his uniform on or not. So, you know, I explained to him that we're all wired this way. So we try to take the furniture and put it into a very comfortable position so that you can see the door, that you have your back to a wall as much as possible, especially you don't want it to a window. So you place it in that kind of a situation, and same with the bed. The bed, of course, is pivotal in the master bedroom. So you want it up against a solid wall and then a direct view of the door. And then you worry about what's on the sides too. But so the classic armchair is a very pivotal way of doing that. You know, I tell everybody, I said, you know, look, if you walk into a restaurant and they give you your choice of where you're going to sit, you are not going to sit in the middle of the restaurant. You're going to sit in one of those booths that are on the outside, and you're going to have your back protected, and you're going to have more command, more control of the environment. You can see what's coming your way so much. So that's a very important aspect of what goes on in a condo or in a house. We try to make sure that the seating, the placement is very comfortable and secure
Right.
for people.
It sounds like that there are enough suggestions, rules, ideas, programs that you could look at that almost any size, shape of house you can make better using some of these tools. So
Right.
my question is that information on your website readily available? Like you said, the 8 steps. We're starting with the front, well, the drive up and then walking up to the front door. Is that available on your website? And where would we get that information?
Well, you know, anybody could send me an email, and I'd be glad to send those 8 most impressionable moments to them. Uh,
What is your email address? Why don't we just do that
well,
right now?
I have several, but I'll give you the most direct one. It's Steve period Kodad, Kodad, at the feng shui cure.com.
Okay.
And
F
I'd
E
be
N
glad to
G
send it.
S H U I, cure, Cure.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
And if anybody in our audience is listening and find out those 8 rules, I know I'm going to email you after this is over.
Good.
I'd like to say I know all of them. I have talked about branding a number of times,
hmm
and is this important enough that you can in your description say this house has been, and is there such a word, feng shuied? It sounds, slightly dirty. That could be me,
Yes.
and I apologize.
I mean, yes, I think you can. And I used to, when I was in real estate, using feng shui, I would actually I had some signs that I'd put in the front yard and say, this house has been feng shui, come in and see the difference. Or if I
That's a
had an
good
open
sign.
house,
Yeah.
yeah, come in and see the house. So to me, open houses are such a great way to try to get people to come see it. And of course, if you're in real estate, you know, you're not going to it's just not a one and off. You know, you have all these other people who have homes. that
Right.
eventually are going to look for somebody who's different and maybe better. So getting them in there to see what I would do would help me in the long run anyway. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
open houses to me were, of course, a great way to push my business. I mean, I had signs for 12 to 2 and 3 to 5 for both Saturday and Sunday. So
Right.
I had an hour for passing. So that's how important it was for me. And I wanted to make sure that people, when I went to their listing appointment, they understood why it was so important for me to be able to do something like this. It just shows it so differently.
Right.
And
Right.
but,
Well, this world has changed so much. I mean, for 2 years, in many areas, there weren't any open houses, or there were open houses, and you had to be masked up, and so there goes the use of the smell and things like that. You
right,
had to wear gloves. Um, the business keeps changing, but
right.
the art of feng shui is how many centuries old, or is it 102 years old?
Depending on what book you pick up, Larry, it's 3 to 4 thousand years old.
Okay,
And so
that's what I thought.
it was first created with respect to grave sites. They wanted to make sure that their ancestors were situated in a very nice, safe, comfortable setting where they had their back to, say, a mountain or trees, and they had a great view. And so it started that way. And the first school, as I mentioned, was form school, and it had a lot to do with the topology. And so it started in South China because there's a lot of mountains and water there. So it was a perfect setting for where they decided to put their house.
Right,
And I show this one slide all the time to people. I said, you see this mountain over here? You would put your house thousands of years ago about a third of the way up, maybe half at the most. You'd have your back protected, but you'd also be looking to your left and to your right to make sure that you had some trees or some
right,
smaller mountains. That's the armrests. And then you wanted to be able to see for miles because you had no idea who was coming your way
right,
to possibly do you some harm.
right,
So we've always been wired this way
right.
to actually protect our backs and to have control of an environment. So it made a lot of sense to me to do it that way. So it really, really a lot of my clients love it and they take it along with them wherever they move to. So they love using it and they feel like it's a much more comfortable environment.
I think once you begin to understand this, it's rooted in essentially survival. I mean,
Yes,
um,
yes.
and ability to see and ability to be ready. Uh, I think that's really important. And
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, human beings have always had this fight or flight situation. So I bring that into my training that, the first thing you want to do when somebody walks into your listing, you want to make sure that they feel okay. And, we've all been into places that we walked in and said, I don't know what it is. There's something not quite right here. So
right,
therefore, you're just not going to stay quite as long if you stay at all.
right,
So the fight and flight, I want to take away as quickly as possible before they enter deep into the house. I
yeah,
want them to feel really comfortable.
right. I had heard that your house, your not your house, but your bed, is supposed to be north and south because of magnetic pull. And if you sleep in another way, you don't even sleep well, or your dreams are bad, or something like this. You pick up these kind of crazy things along the way. That is not a feng shui thing.
Well, not that I know of.
Right,
There are quite a few schools of feng shui. Some of them are more into direction and stuff like that. But no, I've not heard that one. If we do an exercise where we find their four auspicious directions, their four positive directions. And I said, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but if you're going into a business meeting, for example, and it's a very important one, talking about a promotion or talking about income of some sort, you might want to be sitting in a particular location that you feel the most comfortable. That is, maybe you are directed in that
the
auspicious
power
direction.
the power seat in that room,
Right, the power.
the dad chair, to be a little misogynist about it, but they do
Yeah,
call it the dad chair.
yeah. But direction is something that each school handles differently. But that's not something again that we talk a lot about. If we're going to help somebody build a house, we can go right down to all of that kind of stuff and pick a lot that is right for you with respect to everything. But again, if we're working with existing homes, which a lot of your listeners are doing, working with homes that are already up there, you know, is very difficult to get that there. So when we talk about the bedroom, I definitely number one, if there's any kind of indecision about direction with anybody, we go to form school, which we
Hmm.
put your bed up against a solid wall and you can see who's entering the bedroom. You'll
Right.
feel a lot more comfortable. You will sleep a lot better then.
Yeah, I know one of the other things, and these all work against each other, but one of the other things, quite often it's the husband. First thing he wants to know is where's my TV going? You know, what wall? You know, and that would then determine where his chair goes or the sofa goes or, you know,
Okay. Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
and that is like the opposite. They're really not optimizing the house. They're optimizing their own personal because it's their house, they of course can do it. It's the right thing for them to do. But
That's
um,
right. One of the things that Feng Shui has upgraded, updated, if you want to say it that way, considerably over the last 50, 100 years, because we've had to take into account things like electricity.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And so one of the things that I do when I do an evaluation is I have an EMF meter. So I walk around looking for hot walls and looking for things that could cause health problems. So feng shui is a lot about health also, making sure that people stay healthy and therefore productive. But you know,
electromagnetic what
fields, yeah,
field? Okay,
hmm yeah. So it's that blows some people's minds because they didn't expect me to walk in with something like that
right,
that will go off when something is just too hot. And
right.
so you see that in older homes more, but you still see it in some places where you just definitely don't want to put the bed up against a wall that's too hot.
Right. I did have a conversation this weekend with another agent who they weren't interested in the property that I had, but they were talking about another property. They liked the house and everything, but it was right in their backyard where their high tension wires. You know
Mhm.
those
Yeah. Oh yeah.
where you can hear them humming. And I understand if you can hear them humming, it's rearranging your own molecules. That is not a good thing.
Yeah, in our buyer module, we talk about that. That is one of the no-nos for
Right.
sure. Some of the other ones would probably blow your mind a little bit, but we stay away from corner lots somewhat because of the you don't have as much privacy,
Right.
basically. We even have a problem with cul-de-sacs to some degree, especially right at the end where all the energy is pouring into that cul-de-sac. If you think somebody coming home late at night, for example, with their high beams on, and your bedroom is up at the front, you know,
Right.
it causes some, a problem for you. So there are certain things that we try to stay away from, but that is definitely one of them. We don't want to be in very busy streets, just
Right.
too excessive energy. Or you've probably heard of T junctions. You just stay away from T junctions where you have one road handing into another road,
Right.
and therefore you're getting a tremendous amount of energy coming from both directions. Plus, you again have the headlights coming right at you too, possibly.
Sure. Sure. So, I'm sorry. I have an allergy, so my cough is.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. But it really does make sense, and it's a matter of real estate agents understanding a little bit of this. They have you to go to, Steve Kodad
Um,
at the Intrinsic School of Feng Shui. You're located in Florida, but you're also located on the web. So that means you're
oh,
right here
yeah, big time.
in
Yeah,
in
yeah,
our home.
yeah. I mean, our school is, I think, probably a lot more practical than some. Okay. And so we do have a lot of information training about real estate. We have a lot of about getting into even things like universal design and green
Right.
building and
Right.
all those kind of things.
All
All
those
very
things
important.
and becoming more important, especially the
Yeah,
energy and all of that, energy savings.
right. Oh,
And
yeah,
feng shui is about having the energy in the right place all around you.
that's
So,
right. Right. You
um,
want to be comfortable all the time.
Steve, it's been fascinating. Thank you so much for being part of the show.
Oh, thank you, Larry. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
So, if you're interested in learning more about real estate, tune in next week. We'll have another great guest like Steve Kodad from the Intrinsic School of Feng Shui. Awesome job, Steve. Thanks again.
Thank you, Larry. Appreciate it so much.
Record